When my husband and his new lover wanted a third child, I regained my hearing. I am deaf, and my husband never avoids discussing matters with me. But I never expected that he wouldn't even hide it from me when trying out new adult toys with someone else. On the day my hearing was restored, I happily pushed open the door, only to hear his female assistant softly ask him, "Ethan, is it me who excites you, or that deaf woman?" The man, caught up in passion, called out the assistant's name deeply. "Then when will you divorce her? I am the one who loves you the most." Ethan was stunned for a moment and said, "Wait a little longer, I need time. After all, she has been with me for over 10 years and even injured her ear for me. Although I have long lost love for her, I still can't let her go." I sat in the cold wind for a long time and sent a message to the master who had expelled me from the sect. "I am willing to abide by the sect's rules, sever all attachments and love. Just please let me come back." After sending the message, I thought they would stop. But when I had composed myself and returned home, the two inside were still continuing. The room was filled with an indescribable smell, and I quickly opened the window to air it out. Ethan seemed to sense something was wrong. Was someone just here? Could it be that Zoe came back? What's there to be afraid of? She can't hear anyway. Zoe has been waiting outside for a long time and might get suspicious. She absolutely must not find out about this. Besides, it's so cold, and her health isn't good. Andy, displeased with the man's distraction, silenced him with her mouth. Sticky, muffled sounds of water were heard. "But Ethan, don't you find this thrilling? No matter how wild we get, she can't hear us. Just thinking about that deaf woman outside the door makes me excited." Ethan said no more, and the noises in the room grew louder. It was only after several minutes that they gradually subsided. The door was opened for a moment, then slammed shut heavily. Ethan quickly slipped out of the room, flashing me a gentle smile and signing to ask me a question. "Zoe, what are you doing here?" I was just at a crucial part of my painting and was so focused that I didn't hear you knock. After losing my hearing, many of my old friends chose to communicate with me by typing. Only Ethan didn't mind the trouble and immediately signed up for a sign language class. He said, "Communicating by phone makes Zoe feel lonely. I use sign language so I can let her know what I'm thinking right away." For Zoe, a little effort is nothing. But now, what once was proof of happiness has become a tool for deception and hurt. The man's face was full of satisfaction, his cheeks slightly flushed, and the overwhelming smell of musk mixed with an overly conspicuous perfume, making it seem very deliberate. Memories in my mind were suddenly awakened. During the time I had lost my hearing, I had smelled this scent many times, but each time Ethan had brushed it off by saying it was just the smell of paint from the studio. If it weren't for the accidental return of my hearing, how much longer would Ethan have kept deceiving me? My expression was calm, but my nails were almost digging into my palms. "Nothing much, just wanted to come see you." "Ethan, you're amazing. I just finished a candlelight dinner, and I'm already hungry. I really want to eat those little wontons from that place on South Street." Andy's voice came from inside the room. Ethan's expression softened for a moment. After a brief pause, he gestured and asked me, "I'm hungry. Can you go to South Street and buy a small bowl of wontons for me? Without eating this, I have no inspiration to continue creating." I nodded. The moment I turned around, Ethan no longer held back and began joking with the woman in the room. "You really need to take good care of yourself, or how will you cooperate with me in the future?" Andy said disdainfully. "What's there to be afraid of? Even if I faint in bed, there's still someone to run errands and buy medicine. Would she dare to refuse your requests?" Suddenly, I could no longer hold back my sorrow, and tears poured down like rain. Ethan didn't notice. He just watched me disappear step by step into the hallway. I casually bought a portion of wontons from the street. Just when I didn't know what to do with the remaining time, a phone call came in. "Zoe, have you finally come to understand?" A familiar and kind voice came through the phone. I could no longer hold back the grievances and sorrow in my heart. "Master, I want to go home." Do you know that if you want to learn music composition under me, the rule is to sever all those loves and attachments? Only by removing the distractions of romantic feelings between men and women can you calm your mind and comprehend the true essence of music theory. I looked at the steaming bowl of wontons in my hand and answered without hesitation. I understand clearly. I've been learning from you for so long, but back then, I foolishly quit and left because of a man. Now, I want to restart my dream. Good, I will wait for you at the foot of the mountain in 7 days. The period is 3 years. You must calmly learn all the knowledge and not leave the mountain before finishing. When I got home, the house had already been tidied up by Ethan. Buying wontons was just an excuse. He just wanted to get me out of the way. Why are you so slow? It's all my fault. I knew your ears weren't good, yet I still sent you to buy wontons. If you got hurt or sick, even 10 of me couldn't make up for it. Ethan came up to me, looking at me with a slightly flattering expression. The phone notification sounded, and Ethan didn't avoid it at all. He opened it right in front of me. I'm heading back first. When I'm maintaining my figure, I don't eat stuff that makes me fat. Let the dumplings be for that skinny cripple. The man turned around and replied with a voice message, his tone full of affection. Yes, 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 you have a perfect figure. Keep it up. After all, in the end, it's a benefit for me. Next time, I'll take you to that newly opened Western restaurant. This is the man I've loved for so many years. One moment he's caring and attentive to me, the next he's freely joking with another woman. Andy was a freelance model for Ethan's studio. He once disdainfully whispered in my ear, if it weren't for the lack of models, I wouldn't even glance at such a promiscuous woman. But now, having gained both fame and fortune, he didn't choose to replace her. Instead, he ended up sleeping with the person he once looked down on the most. Let's split the congee, just like we used to, Ethan signaled to me, then turned to the kitchen to fetch 2 small bowls, placing them on the table and carefully scooping with a spoon. His expression was focused, as if he were doing something incredibly sacred. Meeting the man's gentle gaze, a pang struck my heart. When Ethan wasn't famous yet, we often went to eat at this wonton place. We didn't have enough money, so the 2 of us would share 1 bowl. Although it was barely enough to fill us up, it was very happy. The freshly made small wontons were tender and delicious, steaming hot. But this bowl now, the wonton wrappers were soggy, the filling of fresh meat and shrimp was leaking out, and a layer of nearly congealed grease floated on the soup. A sudden wave of nausea hit my stomach. Zoe, what's wrong? I pushed away a worried Ethan and rushed straight to the bathroom. While vomiting, a terrible suspicion surged in my heart. While Ethan and Andy were having an affair, he hadn't neglected our own intimate moments. We both really wanted a child, so we didn't use any protection. When I opened the pregnancy test to check, sure enough, it was positive. The bathroom door was kicked open with a bang. Zoe, I'm going to be a dad? I'm going to be a dad. When Ethan saw what I was holding, the unease on his face turned to excitement, and he gestured wildly in sign language. The moment you pushed me away just now, I suddenly felt so anxious. Now that I think about it, it was the baby giving us a hint. I pressed my lips together, a wave of sorrow filling my heart. Ethan carried me back to bed and tucked in the covers. You're a mother now, get some good rest. Turning around, I answered the phone that had been ringing nonstop since a while ago. What's the matter? Ethan, I'm pregnant. You were so intense today, but the baby is perfectly safe. This must be a smart and healthy child. What did you say? You not using protection just means you're also looking forward to this child, right? Shall we get married? Ethan glanced back somewhat guiltily, and seeing my calm expression, he breathed a sigh of relief. I meant for you to take the morning after pill afterward, but forget it. Let the child be born. I will take care of it, but as for anything else, don't get your hopes up. But this is my first time being a mother. I'm so scared. Don't be so harsh with me. Can you come keep me company? It seemed he realized his tone was too harsh, and the man's expression softened. All right, you just wait obediently. After hanging up, Ethan kissed me on the cheek and signed, "There's a problem at the studio. I'm going out for a bit." The model is pregnant, so how could it not be the studio's business? As the door slammed shut, I could no longer hide the disgust on my face. The two of them were just making love on this bed. Even after cleaning up, there still seemed to be a faint lingering scent of musk. I got up and walked towards the guest room. Does Ethan want to marry one at home and keep another outside, enjoying the pleasures of having multiple wives and concubines? He's dreaming. I won't keep the child. Him, I don't want either. To avoid suspicion, I still went to the hospital the next day for my routine checkup as usual. Ethan arrived early in the morning, with Andy following him. He noticed my gaze. He smiled and signed. "Andy is an employee at the studio, remember? She's not feeling well, so I happened to bring her along for a checkup today." The woman wore a tight red dress that outlined her curvy figure, a style completely different from mine. She glanced at me with a hint of provocation. "The baby in my belly isn't feeling well, so my husband brought me here for a checkup." Ethan hurriedly warned, "This is a hospital. Don't mess around." Andy chuckled and, where no one could see, touched the man's chest. "So at home, I can mess around? Ethan, let's try the balcony tonight." I ignored their conversation and walked straight into the room, lying on the hospital bed for the checkup as usual. Everything went as usual until the doctor spoke. "According to your instructions, I have been replacing the rehabilitation medicine with vitamins. But Zoe's ears can't be delayed for too long. If the final treatment is not done soon, I'm afraid she will never hear sounds in her lifetime." Ethan frowned in deep thought, while Andy shouted harshly beside him, "You're a doctor. Why are you worrying about things you shouldn't? Just take the salary we pay you and stop meddling in everything." Then she coquettishly turned to the man. "Ethan, please wait a little longer, okay? Since she can't hear, it actually makes things easier for us. Isn't that so much fun and excitement? If she's deaf, then so be it. She won't die from it anyway." The doctor continued to persuade. "I can see that Zoe really wants to recover quickly. The last few times she came for treatment, she even told me that composing music is her lifelong dream." "Ethan, look." The man struggled with his expression, but in the end, the balance in his heart still tipped towards Andy. "Let's wait a little longer. Things are fine as they are now. I'll take you to get your stomach checked first." Then he warned the doctor again. "Next time, I don't want to hear anything from your mouth that you shouldn't say. I paid you a lot of money to come here. How to treat this illness, and when to treat it, I decide. Mind your position." The doctor looked helpless and had no choice but to agree. The two pushed the door and left. I lay on the hospital bed, as if in a cold hell, trembling uncontrollably all over. No wonder, even though the deafness was caused by a concussion, why hadn't it recovered after such a long time? It turned out that my ear was not incurable. Ethan had deliberately switched my medicine so he could more easily have an affair with Andy, preventing me from getting better. He didn't know that my ear had already recovered, and I had recorded all the evidence of these days on my phone. At first, I loved Ethan and was willing to give up my dreams for him, even if it meant never hearing again, as long as he was safe. But now he no longer deserves that. Without hesitation, I went straight to the obstetrics and gynecology department. "Doctor, please help me terminate it." After the anesthesia, the procedure wasn't painful, but my heart felt like it had been hollowed out, aching unbearably. Ethan didn't come home all night. Early the next morning, he woke me up with a bag of breakfast in hand, his face flushed. "Zoe, today I'm taking you out. Eat something first to fill you up." Baguette, bacon, coffee, these were all Andy's favorite foods. I gave him a cold look. "I'm intolerant to coffee. It makes me dizzy." Ethan's face showed a hint of embarrassment, and he quickly added, "These foods are healthier than the little steamed buns you love. Eating more during pregnancy is good for the baby." Being good to the baby? Unfortunately, this child has already left this world forever. I nodded. Since I was about to leave soon, there was no point in arguing with him about these things. Ethan took me to a wheat field. This was the place where he and I first met. I secretly went down the mountain without my master to find inspiration for composing, while Ethan came here with his drawing board to sketch. The moment our eyes met, my heart pounded wildly, and 1,000 fireworks exploded in my mind. After we got together, nourished by love, I once created many astonishing pieces. Ethan once said, "Zoe, you are my muse of inspiration. Just looking at you fills my mind with endless impulses." It was once so beautiful, but now I haven't composed for half a year. And Ethan has started hanging out frequently with Andy to seek greater thrilling inspiration. The wheat field was beautiful, except that Andy was standing in it. She was dressed exceptionally grand, wearing a long gown of molten gold that shimmered in harmony with the golden wheat. Andy is not only the model in my studio now, but also my personal assistant, Ethan gestured to me. We had been playing all day, and Andy had been tagging along the whole time, until the sky turned completely dark. I heard Andy shouting, 3, 2, 1. In an instant, fireworks exploded across the sky, lighting up the entire heavens, gradually forming 4 large characters, "Marry Me." Ethan's eyes sparkled as he knelt on one knee before me, a red velvet box holding a ring. "Marry me, I will love you and the child in your belly for a lifetime." I once told Ethan that compared to artificial fireworks, I would rather have him propose to me in a vast forest of peach blossoms. Who really likes flashy fireworks anyway? It must be Andy, who was screaming excitedly behind us. "So beautiful, I really like it." "Ethan, I do. I want to marry you." Ethan's proposal vow didn't clearly state the name. The proposal could be for me or for Andy, who was also standing behind. "I don't want to." I spoke softly, but my voice was quickly drowned out by Andy's screams. Ethan suddenly stood up, his eyes red, holding me tightly as if a wanderer had finally found a home. But behind my ear came a sticky breath. Ethan was kissing Andy. He held me, but his heart was elsewhere. "Ethan, can we do it in the wheat field today? I really like it here." "Don't be silly. Zoe is still here. What if she finds out?" The first thing Ethan thought of was not guilt, but fear of me finding out. "There's a guest house next door. Why not send her there? We can be with the baby. How exciting. You felt good yesterday too, right? Let's try being outdoors in the wild." Ethan's breathing became erratic, and he quickly agreed. After driving me to the guest house, he didn't even notice the unease on my face. He made up a casual excuse and left with Andy. With trembling hands, I opened the surveillance app and watched the two of them cling to each other, unwilling to part. It wasn't until late into the night that they finally stopped. Back home, I left the ring on the living room coffee table and turned to leave. As for Ethan, since Andy was bitten by a mosquito while sleeping on the straw, the two of them rushed to the hospital. Minor injury, the bug is not poisonous, and the fetus is also very stable. Ethan breathed a sigh of relief. Just then, the doctor treating me burst in with a panicked face. "Ethan, according to the last examination results, Zoe had long since regained her hearing. She probably heard everything we said. Moreover, Zoe went to the obstetrics department that very day and aborted the fetus in her womb." The disinfectant in Ethan's hand suddenly fell to the ground, shattering with a crisp sound. "What did you say?" The man's eyes were bloodshot with rage as he fiercely grabbed the doctor. "Didn't we change the medication? How is this possible? How could Zoe bear to abort our child?" The doctor trembled as he spoke. "The human body's self-healing ability is more powerful than any medicine. If the will is strong, there is a chance to recover without relying on drugs." I saw from the surveillance that Zoe's emotions fluctuated greatly at the beginning of the therapy. She may have been triggered long ago. Our conversation might have been the last straw that broke her. Ethan's face turned pale, because he remembered the unease of that night. When I was rushing home to share the good news with him, what was he doing? Hanging out with Andy. He even said many hurtful things. "Ethan, who is more important, me or Zoe?" She's timid and plain. Only I understand your passionate heart. How happy we are together. If she had any sense, she wouldn't cling to you with gratitude. Now that she's gone, it's better. Now, the only family you have is me and the child in my belly." Andy was very delighted, reaching out to grab the man's arm. "Get away." Ethan panicked, shaking off Andy and sprinting towards the garage. My mind was filled with the panic of about to lose me. The phone rang just as I got off the plane. "Zoe, where have you been? Andy and I are not what you think." I checked the home surveillance. Ethan couldn't find anyone and was sitting on the ground, looking completely dejected. "We slept together, and I even got pregnant with your child. Isn't that what you think?" The man instantly burst into tears. "You already know? You already know. Since you can hear the voice, why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me sink deeper and deeper?" Listening to the accusations on the other end of the phone, I couldn't help but find it amusing. "I wanted to tell you right away, but the phone was off, the door was locked tight. Did you give me a chance to tell you? It's not that I let you sink deeper. This is your own choice. You chose to indulge. I left the ring on the coffee table. Whether you throw it away or give it to Andy, it's up to you." The man on the surveillance suddenly went mad, shouting hoarsely into the phone. "I don't believe you don't love me anymore. We agreed back then you wouldn't leave, you would always be with me." I sneered. "You were the one who broke the promise first." Then, without hesitation, I hung up the phone and canceled my number. Looking up, before me stood a towering mountain reaching into the clouds, just like the year I left. My master had long been waiting at the foot of the mountain. As a national treasure-level veteran composer, he was extremely strict with his disciples. Until all traditional techniques were mastered, no romantic relationships with the opposite sex were allowed. Once, as my master's most proud senior disciple, I scoffed at this rule. So when I met Ethan, I didn't hesitate to leave the sect and go back with him. I wanted to prove that love was not poison, but a great support on my path to success. At first, it was indeed so. I composed many astonishing melodies. But later, I understood. Love does not disturb the heart, but betrayal does. From the initial suspicion about Ethan and Andy's relationship, to the despair after losing my hearing, and finally to the hopelessness upon learning the whole truth, during this time, I didn't compose a single lyric or melody. Fortunately, it was not too late. "Zoe, have you made up your mind? Once you enter the mountain, you cannot leave unless you have mastered your studies after 3 years. Are you really willing to give up the man outside?" I nodded solemnly. He cheated on me, even deliberately changed my medication to avoid curing my ears. Why should I still love him? "Master, rather than wasting a lifetime with such a person, I'd rather realize my own dreams." The master smiled with satisfaction. "Well said. You are so smart. If you focus and study for 3 years, you will surely graduate and achieve something. By then, what talented young man wouldn't want to choose you?" In the mountains, I diligently honed my skills day after day for 3 years, completely abandoning those unbearable memories from the past. Ethan never disturbed me again. Or rather, he simply had no way to find me. At the foot of the mountain, mist lingered and wild beasts roamed. Without a guide, it was impossible to enter the mountains. It wasn't until 3 years later, when the National Treasure-level Master Composer's top disciple graduated and news spread that he was preparing to collaborate with the National Opera Association, that it caused a sensation throughout society. My master even specially opened a mountain path, allowing explorers to come up and visit, hoping to broaden my fame. But I never expected that the first person to come up would be Ethan. After 3 years apart, he looked much more weathered, no longer the spirited man he once was. The man who used to require special cars and attendants wherever he went was now carrying several bags of various sizes on his back. The climbing jacket was worn out and tattered, and the boots and pants were covered in dust. Seeing me sitting in the pavilion playing the piano, his eyes instantly reddened. He staggered forward, took a few steps, then barely stopped himself, as if afraid of dirtying my clothes. Zoe. He choked as he whispered my name. It was as if everything before him was just a fragile dream. Do you know how long I've been looking for you? From the south of China to the north, from the west to the east, I thought I would never see you again. Heaven has still favored me, allowing us lovers to finally meet. I just found it funny. Lovers? Ethan, your lover is named Andy. As for me, I have nothing to do with you. A glimmer flashed in Ethan's eyes as he tightly held my hand. Are you jealous? That means you still care about me, right? In these 3 years, I haven't contacted her even once, and she had the child aborted. Zoe, as long as you're willing to forgive me, you can ask me to do anything. I irritably shook off his hand. You're overthinking it. I remember this only because I find it disgusting. Whether you have children with her or marry her has nothing to do with me. Seemingly provoked by my cold attitude, Ethan became emotional. Why are you treating me like this? I have my reasons. I have a career, I have dreams, but the mundane days drained my inspiration. Andy was just a tool I used to stimulate my creativity. The one I truly love is you, he shouted hoarsely. Ethan, that shouldn't be your excuse for cheating. If you love me, how could you bear to destroy my dreams? You say you pursued inspiration, so let me ask you, after messing around with Andy for so long, what achievements do you have now? The man's face turned pale, and he opened his mouth but couldn't come up with any excuses. Over the past 3 years, his painting skills have deteriorated. It's not that he hasn't held exhibitions, but each one ended in profit or loss. The inspiration gained from fleeting joy ultimately couldn't withstand scrutiny. So now I'm clear you are the woman I love most in my life, not Andy. Ethan was still deluding himself into thinking he could earn my forgiveness. You can love me, but I no longer love you. Can't you understand that? I am now the master's direct disciple, while you, a nobody who sells paintings, have made no progress in 3 years. What right do you have to be with me? I don't know what he was thinking, but he kept murmuring to himself. I will prove myself. The day I have the ability to stand beside you as an equal. After saying this, he seemed to make up his mind and turned to leave. Ethan didn't come to bother me anymore, and I was happy to have some peace and quiet. In these days, many adventurers and lovers of poetry and music, drawn by reputation, came up the mountain to visit, and I welcomed them all. Among them, a handsome young man stood out particularly. His name was Leo. Almost every morning, he would run up the mountain to discuss poetry with me, and every evening, he would leave the mountain on time. Unlike those who fancied getting close to me, he knew his limits, never making me feel annoyed, and was especially knowledgeable about the subject, always able to chat with me endlessly for half a day. But during an ordinary chat one time, Leo seemed to have gotten a little too close to me. Bastard, what do you think you're doing? Before I knew it, Ethan had run over, raising his fist as if to smash it into Leo's face. Stop. Just when I thought a tragedy was about to happen, Leo firmly caught the fist and pushed the person back with force. Zoe, we clearly agreed that you would wait for me to succeed and come back to marry you. How can you let this stinky man get so close? It's obvious he has bad intentions. Ethan glared fiercely at Leo. I couldn't help but frown. Who was he to think I should remain pure for him? Ethan, have I not made myself clear enough? I don't love you now, and we have nothing to do with each other. Please stop bothering me. I've seen the disgusting way you and Andy have been messing around, and I know you were kissing her while proposing to me. After doing something like that, how do you still have the face to ask for my forgiveness? The man's expression gradually darkened. I thought that as long as I was outstanding enough to stand by your side, none of this would be a problem. I no longer had the urge to argue with him. Leo, surprisingly breaking his usual silence, took over and continued for me. In my opinion, character is the most important. What use is a man who can't control his lower desires? Ethan probably doesn't know the rules set by Sister Zoe's master. To join the sect, one must sever all romantic ties. If you're willing to have a platonic love, devotedly loving senior sister without causing her any trouble, maybe I could think more highly of you. Leo was right, yet also wrong. This was the rule when I was apprenticing, but now that I've graduated, naturally I no longer need to follow it. Yet, I didn't feel the slightest resentment at his interruption. Ethan immediately frowned. A sexless platonic love, how is that even possible? I finally felt at ease in my heart. This is Ethan, no matter when, he can't change his nature. But deep down, I also agreed with this saying, what man could possibly resist? I can, Leo said, seeing my silence, looking at me with a hint of grievance. Sister Zoe, I've waited for you for so long, from 16 to 22, why won't you even look at me? Meeting his clear and sincere gaze, it felt as if something in my memory was breaking through the surface. When I first became an apprentice, I was 19. While sneaking down the mountain to play, I came across a household, an elderly couple living in seclusion in the mountains, accompanied by their little grandson. At that time, the boy still pretended to be a melancholic, artistic youth. I casually threw out a few words, and he would blink his bright, sparkling eyes, following closely behind me, asking questions here and there. Back and forth, we quickly became familiar. Later on, I chased after Ethan as he left, and that memory gradually faded away. The young man before me slowly merged with the youthful face in my memory. It was him. Before I could recover from the joy of recognition, a figure rushed in. You fickle, unfaithful woman, isn't stealing Ethan away from me enough? Now you're here, flirting and struggling with other men, why don't you just die? Andy, who had somehow followed along, shouted. She was once stunningly beautiful, but 3 years later, she had aged considerably. Those bright, European-style eyes had drooping eyelids that sagged with age, and her originally delicate lips had become shriveled due to fat loss, making her look extremely harsh. What are you doing here? Didn't I tell you not to bother me anymore? Ethan said impatiently, scolding her with a face full of annoyance. Andy was utterly confused. 3 years ago, Ethan would always choose her between the two of them. Whether it was for hearing treatment or a marriage proposal, the man could never bear to disappoint her, repeatedly fulfilling her unreasonable demands. If it weren't for that wretched woman suddenly changing her mind and leaving, we would still be as sweet as before. Why is it that once she left, you not only rejected me but also forced me to abort the child? We used to love each other so much. Andy persisted stubbornly, still believing she had a chance. You're just a tool for me to vent my desires and seek thrills. Do you really think you're that important? If it weren't for you clinging to me back then, Zoe wouldn't have left. Now, just seeing you annoys me. Andy had finally found an opportunity to see Ethan. She wore exquisite makeup and put on the once iconic sexy red dress, but at this moment, her curvy figure no longer had any effect. She was harshly pushed aside by the man, whose gaze at her was like looking at a piece of sticky, disgusting gum. No. You clearly said it yourself. Zoe is dull and boring. You love me. You love my passionate spirit. Is it only if that bitch dies that you'll change your mind? Andy had lost her mind by now, crazily rushing at me. Leo quickly pulled me behind him. Bitch, always causing me trouble. Ethan slapped her hard, knocking her to the ground. Looking at the chaotic scene, I could only feel disgusted. Just then, the police rushed in. After all, the mountain was my territory. Ethan kept coming to ask for peace again and again, which was already unbearable, and then Andy came running up, throwing a tantrum and rolling on the ground. The moment I saw her, I called the police. Ethan and Andy were taken back to the station by the police for questioning, and I was finally able to have some peace for a few days. I just didn't expect Andy's revenge to come so quickly. That very night, a scandal about me shot up to the trending searches. Zoe, the well-known master's direct disciple, is actually a complete scumbag. Years ago, she cruelly aborted her unborn child to become the master's apprentice, abandoning her fiancé. After returning from her studies, she acted all high and mighty and even kicked out her fiancé who came to make peace. Truly a disgrace to the sect. Because I was quite famous online before, this matter became widely known in just one night. Many visitors came up to point fingers at me. Even my master's reputation was called into question. Wasn't it said that only disciples who are focused and free of distractions would be accepted? How come this Zoe is both pregnant and has a fiancé, yet you still took her in? By that logic, could the ladies from the street by my house come up the mountain to learn as well? The junior brothers and sisters in the mountains were extremely angry and wanted to confront someone, but because they were outnumbered, they ended up being scolded harshly by the others. That night, Ethan called me. Zoe, do you need my help? I can publicly announce that it was I who initiated the breakup back then, all so you could focus on your training. Now that you've returned after completing your studies, naturally we can get back together. This way, it won't damage your master's reputation, and it will also protect your own name, a win-win situation. As long as you're willing to be with me again and put all the blame on me, I won't hold any grudges. His tone was gentle, with a hint of barely concealed excitement. Because he had finally found a way to make me compromise and bow my head. I chuckled softly. What he said made it sound as if I were truly the unfaithful woman who abandoned her husband and child, and he was the selfless lover, only hoping for the prodigal to return. Ethan, do you know? The way you are now is utterly disgusting. The man on the other end of the phone was stunned, clearly taken aback by my words. What did you say? I took a deep breath. If I hadn't agreed to your plan today, would you have just let me be entangled bit by public opinion, becoming infamous? Waiting until I had no support left, so you could easily force me to bow my head. As if I had seen through his inner thoughts, the man's tone became panicked. Stop talking. Before today, although I despised you, I never regretted the times when we truly loved each other. I never regretted my choice. People change. You chose to cheat, so I can choose to give up on you. At least we were once happy. But the you now feels like a stranger to me, willing to do anything for profit and goals, even abandoning basic human principles. To put it nicely, you say it's for love. But in reality, you are a selfish, untrustworthy scoundrel. The man on the other end of the phone was already sobbing uncontrollably. I'm sorry. I will clear everything up. Don't be disappointed in me, at least. Don't be disappointed in the person I used to be. Ethan was very fast, and with various pieces of evidence along with his own confession, my innocence was quickly proven. The few pages of infidelity records and recordings were like a bomb dropped into deep water, nearly paralyzing the entire network. This guy is so disgusting. It turns out he was the one cheating around, and he almost caused Zoe to lose her hearing. She only chose to leave because of that, not because she abandoned her husband and child. Staying with someone like that, your life isn't even safe. If you don't run away, you're just waiting to die, right? Leo also timely provided proof. It was evidence that I had joined the sect a long time ago, not a latecomer. In just a few days, the incident went through multiple reversals. Ethan and Andy also became public enemies that everyone condemned. Someone even exposed that Andy was two-timing. While hanging out with Ethan, she sought thrills by modeling nude for others for free. As for that child, due to the timeline confusion, it is still impossible to determine which man is the father. Several of her former lovers, who had been deceived by her, came to confront her, demanding she return the money she had taken over the years. This matter caused quite a stir for a while. As for Ethan, since then he has only sent me one message. I'm sorry, I wish you smooth sailing in the future. From what others said, it seems he spent all his savings to buy a small house in a wheat field. He does odd jobs every day to earn money, and whenever he has time, he sits outside the door to paint. Life is barely manageable. Meanwhile, I had no time at all to care about such news or gossip. The National Opera Association came knocking, specifically naming me for collaboration. Leo, relying on his family connections, shamelessly tagged along. Blushing, he asked, "Sister, can you give me a chance?" I smiled faintly, neither confirming nor denying. I would not be disappointed by a single failed relationship. My future is bright, whether in career or in love.